my initial goal when I first started fighting was I think I can have 10 fights, move to 100. If I get to 100, it's like, okay, you just keep going. I think that it's just putting a landmark somewhere, like seeing a tree in the distance and knowing you're going to get at least that far, but once you get there, you just keep walking. Something that is constantly decreasing my fear. It's taking away my fear every time I do it. There's nothing else in my life that does that, and violence is the opposite of that. My main goal is to get other people to dream that dream and to follow that dream. And God, I hope it's bigger than mine too. Like, I hope that when I'm like, I don't know, 50 years old, looking back, there's going to be some chick who's got like 200 fights in Thailand or something. It feels good, man. It's got to feel good. I actually, we were in Thailand, like you might be third on the card, but then they just kind of make it up as they go because the program is actually like a DJ, like trying to like feel the room and do the gambling according to like whether little kids just went or whatever. So I was third on the card, but I actually ended up being eighth. And my husband and I were like, shit, we might be like coming out of the ring, getting on Muay Thai guys. Like, hey guys, podcast time. So
that is the experience right there. That's what I'm talking
totally. About. It's I don't know. It's just
you're used to
because
that,
this is my life. Totally. This is my life. It's like what does 200 feel like, or what is this accomplishment? It's like I'm in it. Like, what do you ask a sailor who's been at sea for 6 years? Like, he does it every day, So it's to me, it's what I do. It's my life, and I'm really grateful and amazed for the opportunities. But because it's my grind, because it's what I do, I kind of don't have, I think, the full perspective on it. So getting to a landmark like 200 fights or something, and getting to pull back and really look at it like that, is kind of like a holy shit kind of moment, and then you just keep rolling. So yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks again for like just coming on after a fight, which is just crazy to most people. So
I'm not gonna be sleeping.
Yeah, that's true. You're gonna be all jacked up. Usually after a fight, I can't sleep for a day. So I hear you. But how'd your most recent fight go? I know you lost via cuts. But how'd you feel during the fight? And just talk a little bit about what you just went through apparently like an hour ago.
It was like a totally quintessential Muay Thai in Thailand experience where I was supposed to weigh in at 45 kilos this morning. So just cutting a few kilos. I'm really small, so that wasn't a big cut. But I'd already started cutting weight. And then 2 days before I was supposed to weigh in, they're like, oh, we changed your opponent and now there's no weigh in. So they told me I was fighting this other girl who I've fought before. But then when I get to the stadium, it's a third girl who is way bigger than me. She's world champion, like 3 weight classes above me. And I've actually wanted to fight her, but would have liked to known that I was going to be fighting her. So yeah, she was like super tall. She's also a clinch fighter. A knee fighter. And it was kind of exciting because, with the height difference, like the elbows for her were raining down in these really nice angles. But when I would like pit bull get a hold of her, I could see her corner going, fuck. It's like, yeah, nice. So, I'm excited to have been able to fight her. Recently, my last 2 fights, actually, my 200th fight and then this 201st fight, were both girls that I've wanted to fight for quite a long time. And then I was surprised when I got there that that's who I was fighting. So it's one of the very cool things about Thailand is that you might end up fighting a world champion without, having to like train for them and prepare and get all in your head and stuff. It's just you show up and you're like, oh, that's who you're fighting. So for me, I felt really good. I felt like I got to try things in this fight and felt things in this fight that I've been working on. When there's a lot of unknowns and things changing right before a fight, the like, fuck it, I'm just going to go in is something that I really, really like. So for me, it was really positive, but I think my trainer was pretty pissed that they jerked around on the opponent a few times.
I'm sure you're used to that as well.
Oh, I'm totally used to it. He's not used to it. I go out without my gym all the time, so I'm like, yeah, this is, Monday. But for him, it was new.
Yeah. And I feel like that's common, especially in female Muay Thai in Thailand for some reason, that you guys tend to travel a lot more, even without the trainers, just to get your own fights in and to schedule your own fights.
Yeah, there's fewer of us, so you kind of have to take your fights where they are. And the money's not as good, and they don't tend to be as big of shows generally. Men, I think, get to fight in permanent stadia more often than women do. But I think it's really cool. Like, I get to see a lot of Thailand that I wouldn't get to see otherwise because of fights. So
yeah. So just going off that, a lot of people know who you are. Obviously, we do. We train in person. I got to see you fight twice within 3 days, which is nuts on its own. But for the people that are listening, maybe it's their first time. There's something that was just going on with Bellator kickboxing, talking about, Gina Carano was talking about putting this live. Like, we have all these legends that are pretty much setting the standard for the sport, creating legacies, and we might miss it if we don't pay attention right now. So for the people listening right now, pay attention, because this is one of these people that's kind of paving the way for you as well. Can you just introduce yourself, let people know what your story's been just from the beginning, kind of like a quick synopsis of everything thus far?
Yeah, so I didn't do any kind of martial arts or anything as a kid. So I came to Muay Thai pretty late in terms of like how the people I fight now do it. In Thailand, they start really young. I was 24. And I actually didn't come to it wanting to fight, but the more I did it, the more I realized that you don't really know shit until you can do it under pressure. So I wanted to fight. And I lost my first fight. I like totally should not have been in the ring with that girl, but I loved it so much that I knew I wanted to keep doing it. And so it just kind of like snowballed and gradually took over my entire life the way that it is now. I didn't plan for this at all. And I'm very lucky that I have such a supportive husband who has been with me in this entire journey. So moving to Thailand as a team and working together has allowed me to set these really impossible goals. Like I moved here wanting to fight 50 fights. And when I got close to 50, I was like, all right, move the goalpost. Let's go to 100. And so getting to 200 now, it's like, fuck it, let's do 400. Just keep going. Because it's one of these things that as a female coming into a culture that's not mine, into a sport that's mostly dominated by men, and just trying to like love the sport and do the sport the way that I know, or the way that I want, or the way that I can. It's like a balloon, like it expands, and you just need to go where it can go. So I think that keeps changing. So, who I was when I got here and who I am now, and who I'm going to be like 4 years from now or something, just keeps changing. But I find it really exciting that in the time I've been here, I've seen people changing how they come to Thailand and how they think about fighting. Like when I first got here, everybody would come for like a month and maybe fight right at the end of it because they were afraid of getting hurt. And now people come and they're like, I'm going to try to get 2 or 3 fights in that time. And they're kind of like, taking inspiration from the insanity of how I do it. And I find that really exciting. I think people are changing the way they think about it. And I think that's a good thing.
Maybe you're just opening up those possibilities, kind of like the example of the 4-minute mile. Just somebody has done it, and then they see you being able to fight 3 times in 5 days, or whatever the insane amount of fights in the short amount of time that you do. And they're like, all right, so I can definitely do maybe 2 or 3 fights within an entire month if you're doing it within 1 week. So they see those possibilities. Now, with being able to have 200 fights, what gets you excited now? Because I know I have fights from time to time that, unless they're a specific name, or it's a show, or it's just a stylistic matchup that really gets me excited, at times it's really hard to, once I'm there, like the training never changes, the drive up to the fight doesn't change, but once I'm there and I know who's standing in front of me, for some reason I don't always have that same switch. I get really excited when someone is better than me, when someone's a champion, when I really feel like I have to prove myself or I'm doubted. But if that stimulus isn't there, it's hard for me to get excited. So I can't expect what it's like when you have 200 fights and it's kind of like another day.
With numbers like that, I'm not picky. So I tend to fight people a lot bigger than me, which, because you're not human size, I think is not something that you get to see a lot in your fighting. I think that if you were rolling up and seeing some like enormous dude, your vision of your challenge would be different from what your particular challenges are. So for me, being able to use every single fight as a step towards what my ultimate transformation is something that has kept me very motivated and very excited this entire time. There are opponents that I just don't like fighting, and I've fought them many, many times. So that can be a little bit less exciting than fighting someone who I think is really going to challenge me in a new way. But facing someone who you've fought many times before is a serious challenge because they know you. Like, it's this whole idea that like you beat someone once and therefore you're better than them is so full of shit. Like, anything can happen in a fight. And when you're forced to grow because you're like seeing each other repeatedly, it's a very different way to grow or way to force yourself to grow. So for me, I think that just knowing that every single time I get in the ring, I'm getting something out of it, allows me to be hungry in every fight, even though it's, 200 in and I clearly have eaten a lot in the process.
So it's more of a self-improvement and growing every fight that really motivates you to keep it going.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like when I watch my favorite fighters, like I was watching a highlight reel of Karahat before this fight, and it's like I can watch the same fight 100 times, like just the way he moves or like the way these fighters have such like casual violence in their bodies. That's not something that you like, okay, I hit that in this fight and now I'm done. Like you constantly strive towards this Yod Muay, this ultimate presence of Muay Thai. Like, I don't think that you can ever be good enough. And especially when you use fighting to keep challenging yourself and growing, if your goal is not a particular belt or a particular opponent, if it's to just constantly keep yourself off balance and trying to adjust and grow as a fighter, I think that it gives you more opportunity to, find ways to improve or ways to challenge yourself in so many different ways. And I think a lot of people who set goals like beating a particular opponent or getting a belt, even though those are incredibly meaningful goals, on the other side of it, they end up being less meaningful than you thought they were going to be, because now you've done it. So how do you feel? Like, you should be aiming for the feeling that keeps you hungry, that keeps you moving, I think.
So why do you feel like improving as a fighter is so important to you as improving as a person? Like, what qualities have you gained through this entire 200 fight journey that has really changed you for the better as a human being? Like, are there any qualities that really stick out that you think you obviously wouldn't have now if you haven't gone through such a grueling, tough journey of 200 fights in how many years? Like, how long did this take for you to do?
Like 5.5.
Yeah, that's fucking. So how much is that? How much is that per year?
Like 36, about.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's just fucking nuts. Oh my god, I don't even have 36 fights. That's just nuts. Anyway.
Yeah.
Just going back to the whole concept of becoming a better fighter and that ultimately making you a better person. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about that and how this whole journey as a fighter has impacted you, specifically a Muay Thai fighter in Thailand?
Yeah, I think that it's my whole process, in the same way I was describing before, how it snowballed and just kind of like gradually swallowed my whole life. Like, I did not at the beginning know that it was going to become what it is for me now. I just kept wanting more. And I think that the process has also been collapsing the compartmentalization of Sylvie as a fighter versus Sylvie as a person. Like, they're not different anymore. And so anything that I'm working on outside of the ring helps me in the ring, and anything that I'm working on for the ring also helps me as a person. And many years ago, when I first moved in with my husband, I'm still incredibly shy, but I hated talking to people, and I just kind of like was really bad at drawing boundaries. So he was like, hey, you should be a bartender because your job is drawing boundaries with people. So it basically was forcing myself into a position to, on a daily basis, have to learn a skill that was incredibly underdeveloped in myself. And I think that Muay Thai has been like that too. Like, especially for women, I think learning how to hit back or learning how to stand your ground is something that we don't learn in our everyday lives. And it's actually seriously detrimental to who we are as people. And we don't even realize it because it's like a pat on the head. You're being a good woman if you're not doing these things. So I get a lot of women writing to me who are having a really hard time in sparring because they aren't naturally aggressive. And I'm like, then find ways to be aggressive in your life, because you're also not training. Like, you can't just do it in the ring and then be a pushover in your life. Like, you have to do both. And so I think that finding ways in which the challenges you have in the ring are the challenges you have as a person allow you to work on both and grow through both simultaneously. And I think that for me personally, in the ring, as someone who's experienced violence and who's incredibly shy and kind of guarded, that kind of like putting a fuck you on the end of all of your strikes feels really good. And being in the ring is a place where you can do that without being like a sociopath. So I think that the way that I've learned that in the ring and the confidence that gives me as a person has been one of the most profound changes in like how I carry myself and how I take up space as a woman in the world.
You're one of the biggest inspirations to the female Muay Thai community, just bringing them together, and that's rather relevant. It's pretty easy to see that you are. What are some of the most common questions that you get, whether it's through email, on your Facebook, on social media, or when girls come and train out there with you in Thailand? What are some of the most common questions or concerns, like obstacles and challenges that girls are facing within their gyms in the West, within the gyms in Thailand? And what's usually your advice in answer to those questions?
It's shockingly universal that women are outnumbered in gyms a lot. And so they kind of don't automatically feel a part of it. And I think that especially in the West, there's a tendency towards the trainer having this authority over the gym, and women kind of bow to that in a way that men don't. And so I think that women are asking me questions about like, how do I fit into my gym, or how do I assert myself when my trainer isn't taking me seriously? Like they want more sparring, or they want more training, or they're hungry for a fight, and their trainer puts them in this kind of like being cared for position where it's like, I'll tell you when you're ready. I'll, give you a guy who's not going to hit you very hard. That is such bullshit. Like, I get a lot of questions from women who are like, how do I get the guys in my gym to actually hit me in sparring? And I'm like, hit them first, like really hard. But I think that a lot of the concerns tend to be around people not knowing whether they should fight or can fight, or like how to kind of introduce their sincerity into their gym space. Because I think for men, that sincerity is assumed. Like, men can be fighters, whereas women, it's kind of like, oh, we'll see. Like, it's a wait and see kind of thing. And I think that more than anything, regardless of where you are in the world, showing your enthusiastic curiosity in the gym space is what makes you able to be taken seriously in any space in the world. And I come up against it a lot, even in my own gym. Like, my trainer will brag about me all day about how many fights I have and how big of opponents I beat and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll totally like little sister baby me to my face. I'm like, don't brag about me to this person and then treat me like your little sister to my face. Like, you can't do both. But it happens all the time. And I think that a lot of both men and women when they ask me questions are basically looking for confirmation that they're ready, or that they're not too old, or any of these things, because they're very afraid of the fact that they have fear. And you're going to get in a fight, man. Like, you should have a little fear. Like, you should be a little nervous. It's a good thing. And for me, I think that the only thing you need to get in a ring, like literally the only thing, if you've never even practiced a day in your life, is the desire to fight. If you don't have it, stay out of the ring. If you do have it, it doesn't matter any of the other things. Just get in there. And so I think that tends to be the question and the answer that I get most often.
You know, I'm a 6'4" man that's tattooed all over his body, bald, right? And I am still questioned why I do this. You know, like, you're an intellectual person. Why do you follow this path in life? So I can't imagine being a smaller female and being questioned, but you're so pretty, all these different comments. What do you think would be your answer to those people, the ones that either girls or even men, anyone really, that's being kind of hindered and asked these questions by their family, by their close friends that just don't understand the sport? I mean, even to this day, 7 years later, I still have a really hard time explaining to people. I mean, most of the time is the people that don't really want to understand. They just say their comments, and if I'm trying to explain, it doesn't really seem like they're listening. But what would your best answer be?
I think that when people ask you questions like, why do you do this, or why would you be a fighter, they're not going to understand your answer. Like, they're not actually asking you why you want to fight, because they don't understand fighting at all. So you actually have to answer somewhere else. Like, you have to answer it at the level of what your passion and your drive is. Like, it teaches you so much about yourself. Or like, my mom is never going to understand hitting someone else in the ring. Like, I can't describe for her in enough poetry or like well-spoken intellectual prose any way that she's going to understand that. But my mom is a performer. Like, she gets on stage and does these very bizarre, like, you know, one-woman shows that I would never in a million years do. So I can't be like, Mom, why do you get on stage in front of all of these people and tell stories about your family? Because I'm not going to understand that. But there is like a root between those two things of like the catharsis my mom gets out of that kind of performance and the catharsis I get out of the kind of fear and challenge of getting in the ring. And so you answer them there. Like, your family doesn't have to understand what Muay Thai really means, but they do need to understand what your happiness and your drive really is. Like, they're worried about you getting hurt, or they're worried about you being stressed. But when you explain to them how in love you are with the process, that's the part they're going to understand, and that's the part that they're going to get. But it's like, you know, if a turtle is like, it's amphibious, you know, so it's seen the land and it sees the water. When it goes and talks to its water friends about the land, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because they haven't seen it. So you just have to find the, like, you know, the way that you can talk to people out of the experiences that they have, that they've seen. Because most human experiences are pretty common. Even if people aren't fighters, they have experiences that grip the basic roots of what it is to be a fighter.
So, going off that, I'm sure that you get a lot more questions about why you do what you do when you go back to the U.S. or outside of Thailand, essentially. Because in Thailand, what you're doing is kind of normal in a way. You know, I mean, not normal, but it's not like, whoa, that's crazy. She's fighting all the time in Thailand, Muay Thai. Like, that's a given. But for people who are outside of our world, who don't even really understand what Muay Thai is, they don't even understand the culture of Thailand. When you go back to the U.S. and you interact with people, is there some kind of disconnect at all? And like, what is a reverse culture shock like when you do go back to the U.S.? You can go back to the U.S.?
No, I've not been back in my 5.5 years. I've never gone back.
Oh shit! So this question is relevant then. Okay. I can.
It's interesting though that you ask, because there is a misunderstanding or like a lack of understanding from Thais, because I'm not poor, I'm not young, I'm not, a man, so I'm not really able to go to these kind of peaks of being a Lumpini fighter or any of these things. So I do get Thais who are like, what the hell are you doing? Because I fight for very little money. I fight all the time. I get cut up and all of these things. And they're like, what are you doing? Because those are not the motivations of Thais. Like that's not, if you look at someone like Sanchai, who has like 400 fights, he fought all of his fights as like a really little kid. And then he, has like grown into this superstar, what he is now. So nobody asks Sanchai why he's still fighting, because you can see him on these huge shows, with his like products and all of these things. But because I don't have that kind of possibility for me, they're like, why the hell are you still doing this? Like, this is work. Like, this is labor. This is what you do, in order to get somewhere else. So the question I get from the West is why or when are you going to open your own gym? And that connects to Thais. Thais are like, when are you going to retire and open your own gym? That's basically the assumed like finale of what this process is. So it's interesting that the assumption is that it's a Western misunderstanding, but I'm totally a freak show in Thailand. Nobody gets it. Like, what are you doing?
Well, it's actually interesting, because I was thinking more. I wasn't even thinking of the Thai people necessarily, because I can understand how they think it's abnormal. But as foreigners in Thailand, other foreigners are like, of course, like, she's fighting all the time. That's what you do when you go to Thailand and you're a fighter. You fight all the time. But yeah, that's besides the point. That was interesting though, because I didn't even think that the Thais would. Yeah, I didn't even actually consider what the Thais would think about what you're doing and how crazy it is to them too. But it's a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of relationship with your gym how much of your own fights and everything you control? Do you control all of it? How were you able to build that relationship? Because a lot of the time I've spent in Thailand, I feel very limited by whatever the trainer's thoughts are on who I should be fighting, what fights I should take, not take, like when I should I mean, everything is essentially controlled. I'm just kind of going by what I'm told. But it seems like obviously you're booking a lot of your own fights. You have events that happen. Let's say you taught a seminar for Nak Muay Nation. You got to travel here. You just did a meditational retreat. Who is that up to? And how are you able to even get that, especially as a female?
I think it's because I'm a female, actually. Your experience is the normal experience. Like, that's actually how it should be in the norm. And that's the way that you get a reputation as a fighter. That's the way you get a gym that is going to be advocating for you and getting you good fights. As a man, you can fight on, these televised shows or Lumpini or whatever the thing is. So that's actually the kind of relationship you want, because it's about the gym being able to strategize for you. Because I'm a woman and a Westerner, and I just am a total like oddball in any gym I go to, because I'm an outsider, it kind of allows me a little bit of wiggle room to push on things that if I were a more normal like status quo fighter, I wouldn't be able to do. So it's partially that I have so consistently had to advocate for myself and make relationships with promoters directly. Like, anytime I would go and like fight in Asan, there would be someone who had like seen me somewhere else and they'd get really excited. And because my Thai was getting better, I could like get the phone numbers and contacts of these promoters. And so it just kind of branched out, so that now I kind of can stand for myself because I speak Thai, I write Thai, I read Thai. I can call these people. And because I got the blessing from my gym to be able to go fight outside. If I had not come to my gym and ask for that kind of relationship. Like if I pissed off my trainer and didn't get his blessing and was like, fuck you, I'm just going to go do whatever I want to do, I'd be a disrespectful, you know, I don't know, like a pariah in the gym that wouldn't be respectfully doing the things that I do. So I'm just incredibly lucky that my growth in this process has been so consistent and so steady that it's allowed me a lot of really weird positional opportunities that are not something that people coming to Thailand are going to be able to jump into. I've had people ask me, they're like, I'm not getting fights at my gym. How do I book my own fights? I'm like, I don't know. You don't speak Thai. You can't like just call a promoter and be like, put me on your show. So it's something that I wish was more of a possibility for people, but being cared for by your gym and being under the control of your trainer is something that has huge benefits as well. And it's just not the path I've had.
So there's no issues with you going to all these different legends and doing your private lessons with them or anything like that. That's still also just up to you, right? Taking the time to do that.
I have really good communication with my trainer, and I explain to him what I'm doing and why I do it. And there are always small things that need to be monitored at every second in order to make sure that is not read as disrespect to him and to my gym and things like this. Like when I go to Chiang Mai, I fight under my old gym's name, which I don't think my trainer down in Pattaya likes, but it's something that just kind of has to move around. Like when I fight Kartchuk, the promoter puts his gym name on me, so it just kind of like in the magazine, like in Muay Siam magazine, they've made fun of me before. They call me Sylvie of 100 Crews, which is not a compliment. But it's also one of these things that's like, the more they see it and the more they see what comes out of it, like when they see a video of me kicking a bag with Hippie and like having Karahat as my corner, I kind of end up getting the last laugh. Like, who else gets to do that? And they're like, ah, shit, that's pretty cool. So like, it kind of, you know, you let them talk for a while, and the longer you keep doing what you're doing, people just stop talking because
they're gonna say that about me soon.
Yeah.
I've been doing something similar. Yeah. You've spoken about the different opportunities that a lot of the male fighters get on televised shows and around the world, in Thailand even. But you yourself, I mean, you have fought on one of the earlier Lion Fight promotions, and you said Sanchai has had, you know, he kind of put in his work early on in his career, and now his just kind of displaying all of that work to a broader audience. Does that not excite you whatsoever to just take the experience from those 200 plus fights and then finally put it on display for the entire world to see live, even more of the general population rather than the people that are really invested in the sport and follow your page in specific?
No, I think that where I am and the opportunities I have and the people I get to fight here is something that just doesn't exist anywhere else. And the idea of like coming back to the States and fighting on a big show that people are more familiar with, I don't know what opponent they'd find who'd be like, yeah, I totally want to fight the chick with 250 fights. Like, I don't know who's going to be way into that. But it's one of these things where like in the West, we get really excited by, you know, Thai fight or watching Sanchai or Bukau fight these Westerners who have like 1/80th number of fights that these guys have. So they can put on a demo and they can look absolutely stunning and amazing because they have all of this experience that makes that disparity really exciting. But when you have an eye particularly for that disparity, it's not super exciting. Like to me, a very exciting fight is like a really close fight where you can see someone constantly having to make adjustments and you know, like the kind of chess, I guess, of a fight. So I don't think by any means that I'm like too good to come fight people in America. It's just not the atmosphere or the place or the platform that excites me. Like where I am really excites me. And the opportunities and the people I get to fight here really excite me. So at the moment, no, not so much, but you know, you never know how things change.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I can definitely understand where you're coming from. But I want to change gears a little bit because you turned me on to Neo Shogo's podcast, the Sports Motivation podcast. I love that dude. The dude like just
totally
knowledge, and the way he delivers it is just really practical. The tips that he gives and all that kind of stuff. And I remember you talking about how you were doing his coach training, his coaching group, and that you weren't much of a goal setter when it really came down to it. I mean, you had your goals for 100 fights, 150, 200, so on and so forth, but not really as in depth as you thought you might have. Once he kind of gave you more of an outline of what you should be doing, kind of stuff. So, can you talk a little bit about? I mean, you're a fighter with 200 fights. You obviously have some good mental practice behind you, mental toughness, and a drive that's hard to match. But what kind of stuff did you feel like you were missing where you turned to Neo to kind of see what other aspects of your mindset and your mental game can really be primed and ready to
go? I know it sounds crazy from someone who has 200 fights to say I don't set goals. Obviously I set like huge, massive goals. But I don't have like a systematic, when you talk about someone who's a goal setter, like my brother is a sports psychologist. So I know the terminology and like what he means by like setting, you know, short-term actionable goals that will lead you to the bigger goals and all of this different type of stuff. Like that stuff just makes my like head spin. I don't do the practical kind of stuff. And so Knee's program, his 12-week program was actually really, really hard for me. It was a lot of hard work. It's not 12 weeks of like motivational talks. They're going to get you like juiced and you go, don't do anything. Like it's really fucking hard work. And I think that what I learned through his process and how you have to monitor so many different aspects of yourself in order to constantly be working is actually something that was reinforced by this 3-day meditation retreat that I just took, which is that for me as a person, it's really, really hard to not judge the thing that I'm looking at. So it holds me back to see areas that I need to grow in, and then I feel bad about that. Like, instead of being like, oh, awesome, I get to get even more invincible, I get to be even better by working on this thing, I feel like I've failed by having this weakness. And so going to this meditation retreat and Knee's 12-week program, it was a similar realization that if you're going to be monitoring all these tiny things about yourself, it's not a criticism. It's not 100 tiny criticisms of yourself. It's just looking at it neutrally and being like, is this helping me or not? And you just want to go towards the things that help you. So I think actually, Sean, for someone like you, all the parts of that program that were so hard for me are going to be like awesome for you. You're going to be so good at it because you totally are a goal setter. You're an entrepreneur. Like you totally know what you want and to like break it down and to kind of piece it together. It's just a certain kind of mind that can like lay it out like that. I don't think that this is particularly women or only women or anything like that, but I think that there are a ton of people, and many of them are women, who don't know how to acknowledge and claim what we want. Like the first step of this program is to like not even set a goal, but just figure out what your ideal vision is. And I'm like, fuck.
Never thought of that before.
Like it was a mixed group. We had men and women, and there were a bunch of really young men, like college age men in it. And you have to write out your perfect day, like your ideal perfect day, which should be so easy to just flow. And the dudes, the like young dudes were like, I wake up next to my model wife. And I'm like totally get in your Maserati and you're like driving on the thing. And I'm like, I don't know, I guess the apartment I live in now, but like cleaner. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, it should be super easy. And it wasn't. So I think that was a huge eye opener for me. That is something that I'd actually seen before. Like there was a guy in my first camp up in Chiang Mai who was not even a fighter. Like, he was just like a dude, like a total bro. And he would like imagine himself winning at Lumpini and like the crowd cheering. And there's no point at which I would say to another person, like, how dare you have that fantasy? Of course you should have that fantasy. And not only that, I should have that fantasy as a fighter. And yet I'm like, I wouldn't dare to dream of that because I feel like I don't deserve it, kind of thing. And like understanding that is like a serious mental problem, to not give yourself permission for a fucking fantasy was huge. Like, that was like, all right, we've found something here. Like, we need to work on this. So
did you realize that early on in the training, or was that something that kind of was just
like, Sean, that was like first day. Like,
really?
He's like, come up with your perfect day. And I'm like, I don't know.
You're thinking life and everything right now. Like, oh my God, like, what am I doing?
Like, picture your perfect body, but I don't think I should be too hot. Like, no, like make it everything. Like, it's crazy.
What are some of the
not too hot?
Well, that's really interesting though, because like I knew that once you got me on Neo, and I knew that you were taking the coaching program and everything, I was excited to read just your whole experience through it, and it's been really insightful, and I'm really excited to just dive deeper into that as well. But what were some of the other breakthroughs throughout the entire 12-week coaching course, and even we'll stick with the 12-week coaching course and then move to the meditation. But during the 12 weeks, were there any like major epiphanies or things that you ended up doing that really translated into your career path and what you're trying to do with your life?
Yeah, I think that the like main tenet of what he structures things on, and I think that you get this out of his podcast, but you really get to work through it in his program, is that everything stems from beliefs, right? So your beliefs lead to your emotions, lead to your actions, lead to the results that you get. And so figuring out, one, what your beliefs are, and then two, where those come from so that you can try to alter them, was huge for me, because I don't ever think about like, why do I think those things? Like, why do I believe these things? Or what must I believe to be getting that kind of result? It's kind of this like, I think a lot of people, definitely myself included, just kind of see emotions as things that happen to you. Like, you're just kind of passive to whatever.
I feel like I almost don't agree with that. From reading your work, it seems like you're really introspective and you try to figure out why you think the way you think, or why things happen the way they happen.
I do, but I don't have control of it. You know, it's like instead of like I don't know, there are certain emotions that I have, like, that because I don't think about where they come from, I just assume that they've been caused by something that just happened, right? But if I actually pay attention to it, it's like, holy shit, I am a bitch and frustrated at 3 p.m. every day, and that's not being caused by something that happens at the gym. That's being attributed to something that happened at the gym, but I was going to feel that way anyway. And I think that there are a lot of things that I do where, like, I wrote down my emotions and realized that I feel frustrated all the time. Like, I'm constantly frustrated, and it's like a groove that's been worn into my emotional vocabulary. Like, I just use that word all the time, like a tick, and it's not actually being caused by anything. It's just your brain will find a reason kind of retroactively. And when you're not attributing it to, you know, the fact that you didn't clinch well or whatever the thing is, when you realize that it's your pattern, suddenly you have way more control over it. It's like, hey, stop getting into that pattern for no reason, rather than like, oh, I just feel this way because, you know, I wasn't strong today or something. So I think that really understanding what your patterns are, and then finding real emotions to replace them, rather than that you should just be positive. One of the things I really love about Nee is he's like, you don't have to be positive all the time. Shit sucks sometimes.
I appreciate that.
You can be in a bad mood. So instead of like constantly talking yourself up and like, you know, come on, Tiger, like talking to yourself in the mirror, which I can't, like, I cannot get my head around, understanding that,
as you look
like,
at your tattoos, come on. Work.
You are an incredible monster. Yeah, no.
Every morning.
Right. But instead understanding that like there are times that I have had incredible and very real confidence based on very real things. You can access those emotions at times that you're not just like waiting for them to happen. So I think being able to put yourself in a state of mind, and acknowledging that you put yourself in a state of mind all the time that you might not be in, allows an incredible degree of authority over who you are as a person. And I think that a lot of us kind of have this like, because feelings are natural or whatever, you're like, oh, that's just how I am. That's just how I feel kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, but you don't have to feel that way. Like feelings are not more true than the thoughts that counter them. They're all kind of imaginary. So you can pick how you want to feel or how you want to think, way more than we believe we can.
I totally agree with that. I've actually just been reading a book talking about like the separation of your emotions and your feelings, and how emotions are how your body reacts to certain events or whatever's going on, and your feelings are how you choose to react to those emotions. And like that's the thing that you mentioned. And I feel like I've been into meditation more and more recently. And because I've meditated more, I feel like I'm less reactive to my feelings and my surroundings, and I'm more responsive. I can actually like take a step back and observe it as for what it is, and then react to it accordingly. Have you, well, you just did this meditation retreat, which I'm sure was really insightful. And I don't think, was it a silent meditation retreat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be super difficult. Like 3 days.
Oh, the silent part was awesome. I fucking hate talking to people. So
fair enough. Fair enough. Well, when it comes to the meditation, though, I know you're doing that morning, day, and night, and that's like a big part of your entire day. So you had a lot of time to just observe your thoughts of what's been going on. First off, have you ever done a retreat like this? And secondly, what was it like this time around?
I've never done anything like that. I've actually never meditated for more than like 20 minutes, and I've never done it without like an MP3 that was guiding me through it. So not only am I not like a very practiced meditator, but this type of meditation that I did, I've never done before. It's called Vipassana, and it's particular to Theravada Buddhism. That's the kind you have in Southeast Asia. And the whole concept of it is that rather than trying to get into this like temporary tranquility state, which a lot of meditation is calming your mind and kind of getting into that trance state. Vipassana kind of thinks that that's some like anesthetic bullshit. And that if you get into that trancey state, you've gone too far. Like you actually need to come back and be more conscious. So what it does is it gives you an object to meditate on. And that object that you're constantly monitoring is your body and your mind as two separate things. And the realization you're coming to is that neither of them are you. Like yourself is not your body, and it's not even your mind. So you're using this thing that isn't you to watch the physical part that isn't you. It's a serious mind fuck, but it's amazing.
No, that's like blowing my mind right now. But I'm like, yes, more.
So it was what was kind of incredible about it is that I was really afraid of doing it. I went to it straight after my 200th fight, the morning after. So instead of having an immediate, like, let's reflect on my 200 fights and celebrate, it was like, you're not going to be thinking about any of that. You're just going to be watching your body like a doll and acknowledging that your brain's thoughts about these things and sensations that you're having about consciousness is suffering. And so the thing I was really afraid of basically was like being alone with myself for 3 days with all my worst thoughts, and like when your mind gets on a loop and it's like solitary confinement or something. And what was really incredible about it is that because I was given this task that apparently my monkey mind's really good at, of just watching myself kind of like outside of myself, it actually was incredibly calming. Not calming in a tranquility way. I was really sad actually for like an entire middle day. But what was so profoundly instructive about that 3-day process. I met with a monk twice, on the first day and on the third day. And on the third day, when I saw him after my like cracked second day, I came to him and I was like, I know I'm doing the practice wrong. Like I'm wrong about it all the time, but that's okay. Like, it's okay that I'm doing it wrong. And he was like, yes, like, yes, you knowing you're doing it wrong, but it's okay that you're doing it wrong is actually right. Like, that was the kind of crazy thing. And if you connect that to Muay Thai, I get all in my head and critical about like, I'm not doing it right. Like I'm not doing the technique right, or I'm, sucking and sparring, or like I can't get a particular mindset or body position or any of these things to work. And so I judge it and I'm like, I'm doing it wrong, and I feel shitty about that. But instead being like, hey, I know I'm doing that technique wrong, and knowing that it's wrong eventually will bring me to right. And that's really good. Like, just keep doing it. Totally collapsed those two experiences. And I had this like, this sounds so hippie, but I was sweeping I was sweeping my porch, and as I was sweeping it, there were some of these leaves that were much harder to sweep than the other ones. Like, those fuckers just would not get off the porch. And instead of like getting all frustrated that I couldn't get these leaves off, it just required more passes with the broom. And I was like, why don't I approach my Muay Thai training with that? Like, there are moves that for me are really hard, but they just require more passes. Like, just practice it more instead of being upset that you can't get the fucking leaf off of the porch.
Sylvie,
like,
you're
it'll go
right,
like this is, and I'm like, yeah, just be alone for 3 days and you'll like come up with this kind of understanding. But it was so freeing, because it also, I made a vlog about it. It's totally one of those things where you're like in it. So I'm like, oh my God, I had this realization. But I described it as escaping the tyranny of self. Like, when I'm doing something wrong, I feel like there's something wrong with me. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me that I keep putting my arm too far over, or I keep getting hit by the same move that I can see, but I'm not blocking, or like whatever the thing is. And in Vipassana meditation, you're figuring out that these things aren't you. I don't suck. Like, I'm not doing it wrong. It's just wrong. Like, the fact of it in the world is wrong. It's one of these like esoteric things that's like, I don't love my husband doesn't love me. There's just love. Like, it just is, rather than it being this like owner directional thing kind of thing. So it's like, there are right moves and there are wrong moves, but you're not attached to either of them. You just kind of like find the right balance between them. And when you're all like obsessed about like, I can't kick or I can't do this thing, you're focusing on the wrong object, and you're like tensing yourself and you're like gripping these things. So I think that was a hardcore version of, again, what I figured out through Knee's program, that was like, if you're going to be tracking, all of these minute things about what you do in every day, to like help your business or help your Muay Thai or help your personality or any of these things, instead of being all bent out of shape that you were only a 7 out of 10 in your training that day, all you think is, okay, that was 7 out of 10. How do I make it a 10? Like, it's not a judgment of you. You don't suck because it was a 7. You just figure out what would make it a 10.
I think that's a huge learning lesson to everyone, especially the ones that are starting out. I wish I was more like some of the people that might not even be as far along the way as I am, but they'll have all these patterns and things to teach people, and breaking it all down in systems. Like, these are the routines and things that I do to get my mindset right and all these things. It's been a lot of what I have done has always been automatic. So I don't feel like I have a system. I know I'm doing all of these things. I'm constantly like checking myself in my head or making myself feel confident. And I feel like in the beginning I was overly ignorantly confident, and it's given me a lot of success in the beginning, because exactly what you just said, I knew I was doing things wrong. And then when they offered me fights against much more experienced competition, I would take them saying I'm still going to kick ass, even though I knew I didn't have as much experience. My kick wasn't as good as that guy's kick. My punch wasn't as good as that guy's punch. He had, I don't know. In my head, it was just ignorance in the sense that I just keep winning, so I'm just gonna win again. That's what's going to happen. I know I'm doing things wrong, but then when I go in there, somehow I win, and I don't know how I was able to gain that confidence. Whether it was like probably through my upbringing that I just had to do that.
Just a cocky motherfucker.
Yeah, just being a cocky motherfucker. But the thing is, being cocky, the reality comes, right? Like, even if you're cocky, when you get in the ring, the truth comes out. Yeah. And the truth would come out, and I would still be able to beat more experienced opponents. But I think a lot of it was that I didn't let my training defeat me. I feel like a lot of really talented fighters let their training defeat them. They have a bad sparring day, and now they're going into the fight like, damn, I got hit with that hook. I don't know how to defend the hook. What if I get caught with that same hook in the fight? And then they go in the fight and they get caught with that same hook. And I feel like it sets a trap in your own mind when you let your training get to you in that sense, when you get hung up on the things that you're doing wrong. So I think your advice right there is just golden for everyone to be able to recognize it, but to still know you can get past that. That doesn't mean it'll happen in the fight, and all you can really do is learn.
It's also you have a huge advantage when you first start out, which is that you don't know anything, right? So like the minute you know a little bit, it's like a huge change from nothing to something. And then the longer you go and the more you learn, the more detailed and minute your criticisms are going to be. And they're not wrong. Like they're things that you can do better, but they're super fine detailed. Whereas like when you first start out, it's like, I can't kick above my waist. That's like a big problem, right? Whereas the better you get when you're like, I can throw all of these kicks and they're landing, but like they're not quite fast enough, or like my balance isn't quite right. Like it never gets easier. You just get better. And so you're like, things you're working on get tinier and tinier and tinier, so that someone who doesn't know, when they're looking at you, they're like, no, dude, like you're awesome. And you're like, no, that kick wasn't right. Like it's the things that you're working on become so small. And so it becomes, I think, more important as you go, because when you know something, then all of a sudden you have these expectations for yourself of like what you should be doing or what you should be able to do, that you actually have to let go more than at the beginning. And that whole like, it's, 90% mental. The longer you go, it becomes like 99.9% mental. Like that increases as you go. It's far more physical at the beginning than it is, much deeper in.
So when you're talking about like that whole concept of like the longer you train, the better you get. Oh my God. Live.
Sean's dropping the mic.
Like, oh my God. It just like fell out. But just talking about the minute the minute
They're in the same room.
Oh, you never guys sleepover.
Yeah.
What's that guy's sleepover?
Hello, fight.
All right,
videos coming out.
Serious time, guys.
We put Thai oil all over ourselves.
Yeah, so how come Paul's all hot and wearing a tank top and Sean's all freezing on the other?
The room it just carries. It's just cold part of the room, hot part of the room.
It's because Sean's so hot. It's just
yeah.
Man, it's making me sweat.
I have to keep it in here.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was going with was the longer you train, the better you get, the more minute the results. And so you've been training for a long time. You've been having 200 fights. So as you've been progressing, I can imagine that the amount of improvement has been minute, but like as small as possible. Does those small improvements keep you motivated, or do seeing such small improvement frustrate you? And how do you handle that one way or another?
No, it really excites me. I love that, like I can be, 200 fights in and like 5.5 years in Thailand. And then I go see Sagat and Karahat on the same week and notice this thing that I'm now obsessed with, this golden age kick that kind of like comes straight. And it's one of these things that like, it's been there the whole time. Like you just didn't see it, or like you didn't understand it. And so it becomes this kind of like, seeing these tiny details or seeing these small changes, or like when I went and saw Chart Chai and I understood his weight transfer, but then I understood it in like more of a 3-dimensional way after, you know, seeing him a bunch of times. And it's like, I just wasn't ready to understand that yet. But then these other pieces come together, and then you do understand it. And it's this tiny change that makes these really huge, like profound differences in what you're doing. And that to me is incredibly exciting. And those are things that only come to you, you know, way into it. Like that's not something that you could be taught it in your first year, but you might not understand it until your 9th year. You know, like there's stuff that Master K taught me in his basement that he totally taught me. And I just didn't get it until, like, you know, down the road, I'm like, oh man, that's what he was talking about. Like, that's totally what he was talking about. And I just didn't like it, like pops, you know, like you suddenly understand it.
That must have been such a cool moment once you like realize what Master K taught you X amount of years ago, and it finally clicks in your mind. You're like, oh,
yeah,
obviously, like what
like,
was I doing before this? Like
that's why he was so frustrated with me. Like it's really easy. Yeah, totally.
So we had a good fan question I want to revert back to. Jasper Moons. He wanted to hear more about your whole process with content creation and how your husband plays a role in this. And I'm kind of interested in it all too, because I was just talking with Paul. It's like, it is insane how much this girl writes. Like she writes like 3,000 words a day at least. You probably write more than that. And then your husband's on top of everything when it comes to social media and like managing and doing all the behind the scenes that we don't really get to see. So can you talk a little bit about how your process is with content creation and the type of role that your husband plays in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, it's again, it's one of these things that like is not planned. It just kind of like it develops, it evolves as it goes. So like when I can't write less than 3,000 words. I'm a Sarah Lawrence graduate. Like I can't write short stuff. Like I honestly wish I could write shorter things, and probably a lot of my readers wish I could write shorter things. But it's one of these things that the way I write and the way I think about things is connected to and a development of how I process things. So when I first started in Muay Thai and I started my blog, it's just because I'm verbal. So I had to digest what I was learning in a verbal sense, and it just kind of has continued that way. But as, you know, 8 Limbs has grown and now with patron content and things like that, it's had to be shaped by, you know, what makes sense for the audience that I'm speaking to, or what I'm experiencing now. Like for the first year in Thailand, a lot of it was like, what the fuck is going on type posts. And now I don't have those as much because I've been here for so long. So it's, you know, my content is necessarily going to change because I'm not confused about what my trainer's saying to me anymore. But my husband, he also has evolved like simultaneously as we've progressed through how things change here in Thailand. He was a social media marketing consultant online, self-taught. And so he would actually use like my Facebook or my website to kind of experiment with things and learn through that. And so we ended up being a little bit like cutting edge on quite a few things that we were putting out just because we were experimenting with it. And then it caught on. And other people have started doing kind of similar things. Like a bunch of people number their fights now, which I think is so awesome. And some people have, you know, taken the voiceover on fights or on training videos. Like how awesome is that? Because it's a great medium. So more people doing it is just better. More people when they're coming to Thailand are blogging. So it's one of these things that like, thank God my husband helps me, because I do write these things, but then when it comes time to like put in the media or put the links, I'm like brain fried, because it's, you guys have both trained in Thailand. You know that the middle of the day when it's like, it's actually a bunch of hours and it's time to rest, dear God, like it's just not like, it's never enough. And when you're trying to work between training sessions and get enough sleep and find food for yourself, like it's really hard. So my husband does like the editing and putting in of links, and when I do the voiceover on a video, he has to monitor it for the like 6 hours it takes to burn so that we can upload it and stuff like that. So
do you do it in the middle of the day or at the end after your second session?
It's both. It depends how brain dead I am. But it's another thing that I got out of Knee's program is creating time blocks and actually scheduling things. So I am a master procrastinator, and I would like wait until the end of the week and then have to like bust out 4 blog posts or something. So now scheduling throughout the week, like this is a day for me to have time to myself. This is a day that I'm going to be working on a blog post. This is a day I have to do a vlog. Those can move, if things don't work out, but having them kind of like progressively put through the week so that it's not just all panic mode at the end has really helped. So that's been really good.
What about like just general scheduling of your day, week, month? How far ahead do you plan? B, if you do, how do you do it? And how far in advance do you normally do it? Because obviously things change on a daily basis with you.
Yeah, everything is scheduled around fights. So if I have a bunch of fights lined up, basically the travel time for that has to be adjusted because I'm not going to be training, but because we're renting the car and we're traveling, we then have to figure out who we're going to train with the legends, like who we're going to go see, who we can go see. So a lot of stuff is structured around my fights. And then just in terms of my training schedule at the gym is incredibly consistent. It's the same hours every day. So
what are those hours?
So I get up at 6 and run on most days, but on days that we go to Silver Lake, which is my favorite, I wake up at 4:30 because we go earlier. So then I run until about 7, come home and do like my morning routine and walk the dogs and kind of like rest kind of stuff. I get to the gym in the morning from 9 until about 11, and then from 11 to 3:30 is stuff that I can get done. And then from 3:30 to like lately 6:30 or 7 is training in the afternoon, and then I come home and I can have time to do things in the evening to try to get things done, but just trying to like unwind and spend time with my husband and kind of like get dinner made and watch something before we go to sleep tends to be what that time is used for. So it's really the middle of the day, and then the end of the day is like emergency fund time.
Do you
to
get
try
enough
to get things
sleep?
done.
I mean, if you're waking up at like 4:30 or 6 every morning, and then you're doing all this hardcore training, like 6 to 7 hours of training a day, do you feel like you get enough sleep? How much sleep do you get?
I go to bed at like midnight usually, so I get maybe like between 4 and 6 hours at night, and then I try to get an hour in the day.
That seems like not enough.
I'm more used to it now. I think for the first 3 years that I was here, that middle of the day was always sleeping. I've been able to roll it back a little bit more now, just because I've adjusted and it's okay for me. But there are times that I just like need a day, like 24 hours to just sleep, like just like restart kind of thing. But it works, I'm not too shabby most of the time in terms of my my energy and my mental focus for the sleep that I do get.
Do you do anything for pleasure outside of Muay Thai? Do you have any other interests, hobbies, anything else that you do?
Not really, no. Anything that I do that's kind of that you would think of as something like that, like reading or knitting or something. It's for Muay Thai. Like anything I read generally is influencing my Muay Thai, even if it's like a mental training book or something. But
just knitting Muay Thai shorts all day between sessions. Hey, Sylvie's a child worker, kind of. She's small enough so they grab her midday.
Yeah, no, not really. But I don't feel like there's something that I would want to do. Like the times that I'm forced to take a little bit of time off, like last year I got concussed fighting my nemesis. And I had to like take I think 10 days off to make sure that the concussion was okay. And I like caught up on all these like newspaper clippings that I had intended to put in a scrapbook, but there was just like a pile of them. And I was like gluing them in, and I'm like, Jesus, I would not want to be doing this on a regular basis. Like,
so
when
you
I
once
get
tried
concussed, I'll do it.
scrapbooking. That's the answer to the question.
Yeah,
This
like
one time I tried scrapbooking for like 17
if I
minutes.
get concussed again, I'll do more scrapbooking. But other than that, it's like it gets pushed to the side. But
Well,
yeah,
I love
like
how you've made an all-encompassing life around Muay Thai, though, because I feel like in order to do the type of things that you're doing, it can't be another way. Otherwise, you're taking your eyes off the prize. You're losing momentum, and I think momentum is so important with what you're doing, especially. And so, yeah, I think just having that overall obsession is super key. Would you attest to that?
totally. Paul has talked about this a bunch of times. It's like, if you have balance, I'm gonna beat you. You have to be obsessed in order to go as far as the things that I've done. Like you can't be like I'll try it out and end up with 200 fights. It doesn't really show itself that way. So it's not like I've sacrificed things in order to be where I am. This is where I'm happy. This is what I like to do. I'm not interested in other things or feel like I'm missing out on other things. And I totally get the like Boyka voice in my head. His like, God has given me one gift. It's like my obsession is my God-given gift. And I actually feel really fortunate that I do have that obsession, and that I do geek out over these techniques or the way some of these legends move, or listening to Diesel Noy talk about the details of his fights is like I could just do that all day. Like it never gets old.
Do you still do any type of strength training? I remember you posting something about getting like a leg routine in just to kind of bulk up and things like that. The last time I saw you, you were pretty not only shredded up, but you had some traps on you, some delts on you.
I tend to, I just have a physiology that if I do 2 push-ups, I'm fucking ripped. I don't know what it is. It's
not a bad thing.
It's not, for a woman, it's not my favorite thing, but I don't know, it's cool. No, I'm kind of like one of those people who always intends to take vitamins, and so you buy the vitamins, but then you like forget to take them. So I always intend to have like a weight training routine, but it's never a routine. Like it's never consistent. So sometimes I'll like work out with my trainer, and he'll make me do whatever routine he's doing, and then use it to make fun of the boys because they had a hard time doing it and Sylvie did it or something. But
can I cut you off real quick? We're hearing a little bit of a buzzing. I don't know if it's coming from your mic.
Maybe, I don't know if it's your phone, maybe close to your microphone or something of that sort.
It's a little bit of a buzzing. It's
Did
like a
that
little
change it?
B. Oh, I
Did it
hear it
move?
right now.
No, there's a buzz. Maybe I can turn off my fan.
I don't know, like it goes in and out a little bit. I guess we'll just roll with it. Just
Okay.
roll with it. All right. So, what were we just talking about? The strength training. Oh yeah. So that's actually a good road to go down, because you're obviously fighting so often that I can imagine adding a regular strength training program must be relatively tough, because you don't want to be too sore where it affects your Muay Thai training, but you also want to be focusing on other aspects like strength and conditioning. So how do you balance that? Do you do any set amount of strength and conditioning routines during the week? Like, what is that all about?
The one thing that I am super consistent about is like body weight, right? So I do like push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, that kind of stuff like every day, because in Thailand you can never get away from those things, and Thais love hundreds. So I do like hundreds of sit-ups and push-ups and pull-ups every day. But in terms of like actually lifting weights, I've tried to do like squats, partially to protect my knees. Like sometimes I get a little bit of a tweak in my knee, and so then I'll remember to like put together some kind of squat or leg exercise to try to protect my knees a little bit, and then it kind of goes by the wayside. But it's kind of a blend. Like it is that because I fight so often, it's really hard for me to like get a weight program going, because you don't want to be like super sore from a new weight training regimen when you have a fight coming up. But it's also because I fight all the time. I go into fights with all kinds of stuff all the time. Like I'll go in, you know, with a fresh cut. I'll go in with food poisoning. I'll go in with the flu. Like it's never super comfortable in fights. So it doesn't completely take me out of, you know, like I wouldn't not do certain weight training because I have a fight coming up because I'm going to be sore anyway. So it's not that big a deal.
Would you mind unplugging your microphone and plugging it back in? Yeah, see, it is. Yeah, because once it's unplugged, it.
Talk, Sylvie. Sylvie, you there?
Now her audio is gone.
Of course.
I'm liking these comments rolling through, especially the random ones. You just got to be ready to kick ass, bro. You just got to be ready to bang anytime, man. That's what fighting's about.
So, Sylvie, can you hear us yet? Yes, we can't hear her, though. Oh, no, we lost her. She's going to come back. Don't worry. We're figuring this shit out.
Muay Thai guys in here.
Oh.
The way it originally was.
Muay Thai guys.
To be.
Sylvie, you there?
And the girl. Muay Thai guys and the girl. There she is.
Still a little bit of a buzzing, but I guess we'll just.
I think it's when you have your head to the. If you turn your head to the left, it usually makes it worse.
If it goes that way?
Yeah. No, I'm serious. Just now, like when you.
This way's okay?
No.
No.
I was wrong.
I'm trying to. You asked me about other shit I do. I'm starting my rap career, so this is actually my robot voice.
Ah, there you go.
You like it?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's buzzing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything that we could do really. It just kind of came on randomly.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I'll get used to it. For anyone that has a problem with it, just fucking deal with it, guys.
Yeah. Maybe can you like move it thingy around a little bit?
Can you like move some shit around?
I don't know, like the internet, you unplug and plug back in, and then it magically works. So that's why I figured I was gonna have one of that.
Move the wire around on the computer. Move the wire around on
Sean is the tech savvy one of everybody.
Oh, yeah, that says a lot because I don't know shit.
Man, you should have seen how long it took us to set up the podcast yesterday.
Oh my god.
Ooh, it was the first time we had 3 people on, but now we have it figured out.
We're like semi-pros now.
Oh, so I'm like sloppy seconds of your guys.
If that's what you want to call it.
No, it's like our first one was like that trial. Like,
yeah,
you know,
working it out.
Does anyone else hear the buzzing, or is it just me and Paul? Comment below and let us know if you hear Sylvie buzzing or not. If you hear her robot voice.
with Cody, it was that awkward, like cherry popping. You just like it wasn't good.
Yeah, it's like
But,
awkward.
like it
and
happened,
messy.
but like we got it done.
Like, no,
So you
I'm
high five at the end, and you're like, that wasn't that
You're like-
great.
You won't meet each other's gaze anymore. You're just like, see you later.
I don't hear the buzzing anymore.
Yeah, now it's good.
You
See?
did something.
We had to
Something
change
magically.
the subject.
The Muay Thai guys were
Wait,
like,
speaking of Cody, we were talking about I hear auto tune. All right, auto tune, man. That's what.
We'll figure it out. All right, what are we going? Thai prison fights?
Yeah, it's gone now from what we hear. Yeah, so speaking of Thai prison fights, you were saying that there was actually a female one, which I was kind of surprised about because I feel like they wouldn't really give a fuck about you guys to get out of jail.
It was not televised or like filmed the way that this one is, like as a whole thing. But it's one of these things that's like legend has it or whatever. There's newspaper articles about it. It was up in Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai has women's prisons that usually teach women either how to sew or how to like be masseuses or something, and then they can go and have a trade when they come out. So that's normally the programs they have there, but they had a Muay Thai program up there that was teaching women how to fight. And they went and had a tournament there where the woman who won was going to like win her freedom in the same way that they sometimes use that for, I think, prison fight now. but they didn't let her out. Like she won and did not actually get out. So I think it was like
that is like not cool at all.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the details of it. But she was small. Like she was like 115-pound, like little stocky lady, I think.
What weight are you fighting at right now?
I actually weigh like 103, 105 pounds, like 46, 47 kilos. And then I'm always fighting girls that are like 112, 115, or like fucking 130.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
Building off the prison fight thing, I'm just curious about your opinion on it. Because I mean, you've been in the Thai culture for so long and everything, and they obviously do things a little bit differently there. This one is one of the more polarizing things that they do, and I'm just curious, what are your thoughts of the whole Thai prison fight, like promotion and idea? And is this something you agree with, disagree, or kind of open-minded to?
I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about it. But it's one of these things that like the spectator aspect of it feels a little gross. But at the same time, Thai prisons are really shitty. Like they're really intense. And so the opportunity for someone to even just train in a prison in order to have something to focus on and then have a fight or whatever the thing is, like having that opportunity in prison actually seems really awesome to me. Although it's very narrow scope who's allowed to do it and that kind of thing. So in terms of controversy, I think it's a little gross to watch it in this kind of like, because it's such a weird kind of like pervy thing to be looking at. But at the same time, given the opportunities that people have in those situations compared to the kind of opportunity that this is, if people are into it and able to train Muay Thai, I think it's actually a good thing or interesting. I just find it really weird that they have them fighting like Farong all the time. I don't understand why they would do that.
I feel like romantically, it is a nice idea, and the story itself is very movie-like. And even just hearing about it, yeah, I thought it was an actual movie. I didn't think that was a real documentary or a real thing. So once I found out about it, I was super intrigued. I mean, Cody was on last night, and he was telling us how it's kind of weird because the guy added him on Facebook. So to see the guy who once murdered another person's child out of prison, and then he fought him, and then now they're friends on Facebook, checking up on each other, like, "Hey, how you been? Everything good?" It's just unreal.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I have so many more questions to ask you. It's just hard to usually pick which one. But when it comes to reaching this 200 marker, I mean, because that's obviously a huge deal. You've mentioned how the haters have been there, and you've kind of just kept doing your thing, just put your head down and focus on that. Now you've kind of noticed the haters go away, I feel. But does that – because I know that with my motivation, a lot of it lies in having positive reinforcement behind me, having my family and friends and all that kind of believe in me. But I need that small percentage of people just doubting me and saying what I'm doing is stupid and I'm never going to succeed, because that kind of fuels a little bit more fire in me. Is that the same? Does that like resonate with you at all? Or are you just so intrinsically motivated with your journey that everything else is just kind of white noise in the background?
I'm not motivated by haters. I'm not like, watch me. Like that's not really in my personality so much. But I am grateful for the fact of haters, because they do shed light on aspects of whatever your public persona is that maybe is something you don't want, like, and you're unaware that you're coming off that way, or you're unaware that there are gaps in what you're doing that could be addressed. So I think that there are good things that come out of it. It's just not a motivator, like I'm going to prove you wrong kind of thing, because that's not what started it. Like that's not what motivated me from the beginning. And I think that the way that my presence, like my online presence, grew out of basically the fact that I was like filming my training so that I wouldn't forget what Master K said to me, and then like putting it online because not everyone gets to train with someone like that, so it would be great to like put it together. I didn't start it from a like, watch what I'm gonna do. I'm amazing and am doing things right. I actually put up long form videos from the beginning that's like, look at me not get this really easy concept for 30 minutes. See if you can figure out what Master K is saying. So I think that my motivation has definitely deepened over all of this time, but it hasn't really changed a whole lot. It's just been informed by knowing more and seeing more and understanding more. But the difficulty, I think, with haters or people who don't agree with your vision or don't see what you're doing, is that even though I have a part of myself that's like, well, they just don't know me, or they don't know what I'm doing, or they don't understand what I'm doing, it still hurts. Like, it's something that you can use for good purposes, but you're never like, I'm never like, yes, I'm so glad I have haters. Whereas like my friend's boyfriend was like, man, you've made it. You've got haters. I don't know. Maybe that's like a dude way to look at it or something. But it's
Probably.
it is, again, it's one of these things where like people who have really severe criticisms and time on their hands to like make a big fucking fuss about it online, like posting things everywhere and making sure that they downvote all of my comments or videos or something. Like, they've got a lot of time to do this stuff.
You must be talking about Reddit if you're talking about downvoting.
Like,
I think I'm not too familiar with Reddit, but from what I hear people say, it's like the most relentless place, like forum online.
It's not female friendly. It's an intense place, but I think in terms of like stupid comments, it's hard to pick between YouTube and Reddit. But YouTube's been around longer, and I used to get a lot of really bad comments on there, and again, the shit just gets flushed. Like, it
What
just
type
goes
of
downstream.
messages do you get from guys? How about that? That's a good question. I'm sure you get a lot interesting ones.
I think to me the most annoying ones are just mansplaining. Like, it's just this like assumption that they can explain to me what I should be doing or whatever this thing is. But to me, like, the really, really bad ones are the people who like get on a thing and they want to stick with it. Like, there's this really weird dude who on every video would tell me to learn Greco-Roman wrestling first. Like, all caps, every video. My husband actually found his like what is it called? Like VPN number or whatever, figured out where he was, his IPN number, and was like, posted it online, was like, hey, this dude is in Texas, like whatever the thing is, and he stopped after that. But like, the mansplaining pisses me off because I still get it like in person sometimes, like at my other gym. I was sparring with a guy who outweighs me by like 40 pounds. And so clearly was having a little bit of difficulty moving him. And this fucking dude from nowhere, started giving me advice on like how to spar this guy. Then he gets in the ring, and I swear to God, guys, like, I could not overstate how shit his movements were. I'm like, why are you talking to me? But that exists as people, they call them keyboard warriors, but it's people who are enthusiastic about the topic or about martial arts. They just don't have the experience. It's like that dude in your gym who like goes way too hard in sparring because he's not a fighter, and that's like his fight or something. So I kind of have a little bit of compassion for those people. It's just annoying. But I don't know if you guys get it. It would be awesome if you guys got it. But women get a lot of like foot fetishes. You guys?
I was gonna ask if there's guys that are like, come wrestle me up and beat me up for 500 baht.
See,
I've gotten that.
If they
Seriously, I've got that. Fucking
you're
weird.
a beautiful man, Sean. It's
I
not.
guess so.
It's, to me, if they start with that, like if they start there, showing it right off the bat, that's fine. But you actually know the pervs because they start with like a really vague question that's stupid. They'll be like, do you do Muay Thai? And I'm like, on my Sylvie von Duuglas-Ittu Muay Thai Facebook page, I don't know. Like, should I answer this? And I don't, because I know better, but there are tons of women who will like screenshot, and it's the same dude. Like, it's the same like 15 dudes will write to all martial arts women and be like, do you think you could beat me up? Like, do you think you could choke me out? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, probably you sound like a pussy, but like, I'm not going to answer you because it's just, you know, whatever that is.
Well, it's got to be at least 2,500 baht, I think.
You need to set standards at least.
Yeah, you have to set standards. Hey. I'm not doing it for 500 baht.
Nah, man, that's chump change. But I want to go back to a topic that you mentioned earlier on, which was some of your long form training and voicing over stuff, because you've done a great job with documenting your training with some of the living legends of Muay Thai, and doing your whole legend library thing is such a unique thing and a great way to just preserve the legacy of all these golden era Muay Thai fighters that, I mean, there's no videos out of them like anywhere, especially of them sharing their knowledge and technique. So what gave you this idea, and how has it affected your learning ability, your skills, and just your overall development as a Muay Thai fighter?
Oh God, in so many ways. It actually kind of crazily grew out of the fact of my dog. We adopted JD out of a trash pile that I remind him of that fact when he's being a little shit. But you can't travel with dogs really easily. Like, not a lot of places take dogs. You can't travel with them on buses. Like, you'd have to put them in the like bottom compartment kind of thing, which is just crazy. So like, obviously, traveling for fights, we had to start renting cars in order to be able to take JD with us. So out of that grew the possibility of traveling through Thailand in a way that we were never doing before. And then out of that grew the possibility to train with legends, because I was starting to build connections. So it kind of was just a like novelty, like, let's just try this as a thing. But the amount that you can get out of those like 1 hour sessions by just watching these guys and listening to what the way they make fun of what I'm doing, like you can learn so much from it. So it just kind of evolved from the idea of let's try this as like a novelty, and kind of like branching out and now trying to find as many as possible in order to really not only preserve the legacy of what their techniques are, but because it's long form, you get to really see the men, like really archiving these men's personalities. Like, I'm a good writer. I could not describe Yod Kunpan or Karahat or even Diesel Noi accurately to what 5 minutes of them just interacting demonstrates. So I think it's really cool to be able to just like see these guys. Like, I would love to see video of like Jack Johnson just being fucking pimp awesome from his day, you know. So I think that would be really cool. But it's also one of these things that because it's become more of a like focused project and trying to expand it and get more. Before my 200th fight, like 10 minutes before my 200th fight, this dude in a suit came up to me, and he had like left his job on his lunch break to come watch my fight. And they were taking too long with all the like VIP head honcho introduction things that they do on TV. And so he was like not sure he was going to be able to see my fight. So he just came over to tell me that his uncle helps run the like historical center for Muay Thai, which is the first place I trained with Diesel Noi, was this like outdoor historical preservation society thing. And his uncle is friends with this guy who's like one of the oldest masters. Like, he trains people who like are masters now. And he wanted me to go train with him for my project. Like, I was being asked to go put this guy in my library. And he's like, I would just love to know what you think. And I was like, I would love for that to have been a fact anyway, but for this to happen now and so soon, and for like Thais to be like, we want in on the project, was so exciting. It was so mind-blowing. I'm like, you tell me what time and I will be there, because I can't wait to train with this guy. And it's kind of my hope that now that we have the crew fund set up, and so we can actually financially support these guys a little bit through the project as well, that the word will spread a little bit with these guys, and they'll like want to get their friends in on it. So instead of me like trying so hard to track down Boon Lai, Diesel Noi, who knows everyone, will be like, "Hey Boon Lai, where are you at?" Like, so he's gonna come see you. So working on that has been really good. They seem to actually just be really excited when they see the videos, like when they see small parts of it being shared. They actually get really excited to know that people are learning from them and you know, still excited about what they're doing, because I think that they're slightly disconnected from their like glory day highlight reels. You know, like seeing yourself as like a young, virile, handsome man, and you aren't that anymore is like, yeah, that's great that people celebrate that, but people like geeking out over Diesel Noi now or like Karahat now, I think that they I think that they really
would get
that.
so excited. He would show me all his videos while we were in camp. He's like,
oh my God, I wish
this guy.
Right? I wish there were more. Like, there are some people who only have like 3 videos online, and so they'll like have them as a playlist on their phone, and I'm like, why not all of them? Like, it sucks that YouTube is so new, you know? Like, I wish it had been around longer.
How can people find this? How can people find the library? How can they join the project? How can they contribute to the project? What does it do for the legends themselves and for the sport?
Yeah, so it's through Patreon. So you can get the videos through my Patreon. So if you just look that up, Sylvie Muay Patreon, you can find that. But that's where the actual library is. You can see like 10-minute videos, like excerpts on my Muay Thai Techniques page or on my Facebook page. And then the way to support the project and the legends, I'm selling like apparel. So there's like a Karahat shirt right now. There will be more legend shirts, and the like a percentage of my shirts and like my 200 fight shorts goes to the crew fund. So it's basically like a big pool of money that will then go to the crews based on the minutes watched of their technique videos. So that's going to be down the line a little bit, but if people want to get involved in that, it's basically from the outside merchandise. That money will be going to the crews, and in terms of like watching the actual videos, that's through Patreon. But it's sponsored by Boon now, which is really, really cool.
That is
good quality stuff. Good quality.
Yeah.
So we got a question from Danny Lee. I think you just answered this, but how does this fund work to help the people? Not a lot of money would be sent to something to help them reach their goals. Not really sure exactly what you're talking about, Danny, but to be straight up, but Sylvie's, like you said, the merchandise goes to the crew fund, right, which gets divvied up among the crews, and then the Patreon is to help you paid for these sessions and the travel to get there and to continue.
Right. And a percentage of that goes to the crew fund as well.
And a percentage. Okay, beautiful. Well spoken. Yeah, that's such a cool project. And yeah, I'm sure you probably wanted to do that earlier now that you know that it's possible. And yeah, it's so cool to watch these videos. And has there been one lesson or instructor that has had the biggest impact on your game just through that one or however many sessions you end up taking with them?
Karahat 100% has had the most influence because I've worked with him the most, and he's like, I want to be him so badly. So there's definitely the like connection, and he's actually transformed my Muay. Like, he switched my stance so that he wants me fighting southpaw and things like that. But Chart Chai and his balance and kind of like weight transfer has had a huge effect. But I'm really surprised that there are these guys who, like, I totally don't expect a lot from. I don't know a lot about them, but there's this trainer up in the north at Santai, Crew 10. I think most of their trainers are Pinson Chai, so I assume he's Pinson Chai, but I'm not 100%. But he's one of these, like, older dudes who's, like, overweight and doesn't speak. He must smoke, like, a pack of cigarettes a day and just kind of grunts. Like, most of his communication is grunts. And so I get there and I'm like, hey, I want to learn some Muay Khao styling from you, because I heard from, you know, the guy who runs Santai that he's a Muay Khao fighter. And he's like, okay. And then just manages to drop like 30 years of Muay Thai knowledge in 1 hour, just like technique after technique after technique with like repetition and practice inside of it. It was like, part of me was like, thank God I have the experience under me that I have to be able to like get what he's saying and move on to the next thing. Because there are times that like I'm working with someone and I'm just not getting it, so they can't move on. So you don't get as much, you don't get as much breadth out of those sessions. But Crew 10 just like blew my mind in terms of like this dude who you could probably train at that gym for like 4 months and have no idea how incredible he is. He's just that dude that's like on the side or whatever. And then you realize who he is or what he is, and it's like it's just endless. It was the same thing with Yod Kun Pan, the elbow hunter. He lives right next to my gym, so I'd seen him like a bunch of times and had no idea who he was until my trainer was like, oh yeah, he used to be like this incredible fighter, they called him the elbow hunter, blah blah blah. And I'm like, really? So I start talking to him and ask for a lesson from him, and then when they turn on name.
Yeah.
Oh my God! When
hunter. Wow.
Not only is it the elbow hunter,
shit in comparison.
it's the elbow hunter of 100 stitches, because he would just.
That's like ancient Native American name. That's like hardcore.
And it's one of those things where you're like, why do they call him? And then you watch one of his fights and you're like, wow, 100 is an understatement. But again, he's just this dude who like lives next door and is totally like quiet and unassuming and just kind of doing his own thing. And then he's like showing you how he wants you to do something, and he goes into fighter mode. You guys must have seen this with your trainers where they get the like cat eyes all of a sudden and you're like, oh fuck. Like,
he gives him a facelift, a little nip tuck.
When they get into fighter mode, it's just like it's like they've been possessed and they're being gentle, but it has that promise of what their intensity would have been, and you're like, just don't touch me. Like
the guys are funny because you'll be texting with them. They'll be sending like little dog emojis with hearts, like jumping up and down, like little cartoons, and they're all cute. And they take little selfies with you, being all cute, and then they flip that switch. It's crazy.
Dude, Pornsene is like one of the most evil dudes in the ring. His car is all Hello Kitty, like his entire car.
I love that dude.
Hello Kitty.
I sparred with him one time. And talk about like a guy who loves just sparring, fighting, the sport, and he's such a you see him in the ring and he looks like a savage monster, like meanest guy in the world, and then outside the ring, like you said, Hello Kitty, everything, and then like the nicest, most like exuberant guy, and it's just it attests so much to the sport that you can be such. It's just such a crazy thing, just like coming full circle, that you can be like this completely different person outside the ring, but once you turn that switch on and go inside the ring, it's just night and day. But going back to something you said about earlier on in the podcast about how you feel like the stuff you do outside the ring translates to inside the ring, what about guys like Pornsene? Do you feel like, just this came off the top of my head because he is like a super nice guy. But then again, I don't really know Pornsene, so what the fuck am I supposed to know? Because he's probably not a pushover. He'll probably leg kick you to death if you talk shit to him, So,
yeah, my own trainer is like one of the sweetest men, but I would not want to be on his bad side. Like when he describes the times that he's had to like go deal with someone that was like a year ago, like, oh, Jesus, like I don't want to be on that side. But it's I think that what you see in the ring is an expression of their masculinity, and that kind of like quiet version is another expression of their masculinity, and they don't contradict as much as they seem like they would. You're a dude, so it's probably a very different experience for you, but I'm a woman. Pornsene is charming. Pornsene is like a womanizer for sure. I mean, he's totally not being gross or whatever. He was totally teaching me and like very respectful of my wanting to learn and like actually getting all of this stuff. It was not like a flirting session.
It's not bedroom eyes.
You don't take it out. Like it's part of him. It does not turn off. When I did my session with Yodwicha, who's like 20 years old, we had a really hard time finding stills where it didn't look like he was trying to seduce introduce me in like all of these pictures. And I didn't get any creepy vibes off of him at all, but that's like part of his masculinity. And so this like virility that you see in the ring of like men fighting men has this like context when they're fighting each other. Like part of what I love so much about Karahat is how like casually violent he is in the ring. Like he'll like cut a dude and then point at it like, oh, you want to check that? Like you've got something on your face, and it's like Lam Namu, like flashing blood. And that's him. He's putting on a performance, but he's not like, I'm gonna do this thing. Like it seems to me that Western fighters who either have this personality that's all the time, that you're like, that must be exhausting to try to be that much of a dick all the time. Like, are you Bukowski? Like, what are you doing? Like, Conor McGregor cannot be Conor McGregor all the time. Like, there's no way he can be like that all the time. But if you tried to picture him as like kind of a like quiet, just singing into his whiskey at the bar or something like that, we don't like that double persona. But I think that here there's more of a like coherence between that violent expression of the masculinity and the kind of like polite whatever, but you wouldn't want to like piss that dude off, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I seduce Seanan, and then I just
It's a
fuck
problem.
him up, and then I fuck him up.
He beats me. I like it.
More
though.
ways than that.
Keep it
That's what
PG.
I
This
do.
is family podcast. Jeez.
It's not PG at all.
I know.
We haven't sworn much on this one, so maybe we'll make it on iTunes to like the non-explicit content one.
I've been swearing this whole time. It's just
No,
you guys have been all like, gee whiz.
My golly gee whiz.
Well, this has been a great podcast. But seriously, we're gonna end up kind of wrapping it up so we can get into the Q&A, which is live on Facebook. So for everyone listening on iTunes, hopefully you took a lot of gems away. Hopefully you had your notepads out the entire time. Hopefully you were able to gain a lot of insight into mindset, training, goal setting, things like that. Anything you want to leave people off with, Sylvie, for the ones listening on iTunes, for your website, anywhere they can follow you and just join the fund once again?
You can find me super easy by just Googling Sylvie and Muay Thai. You can find like all of my stuff through doing that. So definitely check out my 8 Limbs Us, which is where you'll find like my blog and lots of videos. I'm on YouTube. You guys are so and my Patreon, definitely please check out. But yeah, I'm on all that stuff. You guys are so cute together.
Oh,
the best
man.
couple ever.
This is still iTunes, bro.
He
They have
likes
no
it.
idea what's going on.
He likes it when I do this randomly.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
And
hug is
girls
just
like
a
it when you
ship that isn't
randomly hug
finished
them.
yet, right?
Because Sean likes it when I randomly come up and rear naked him.
You ticklish, bro?
I ain't
Bro, you
ticklish.
ticklish, bro?
I don't laugh.
No.
What are you talking
I don't
about?
laugh. I don't
Stoic. Stoic. Well, thank you so much, Sylvie, for coming on. And yeah, well, I'm sure we'll chat again sometime soon. But yeah, we'll get to the Q&A session on Facebook now, huh? So, fans, whoever's watching, we got 130 people watching right now. We're doing the Q&A session with Sylvie. Ask away.
Well, there's been a million questions rolling through during the podcast, so why don't you scroll through?
Oh man.
the
Okay.
comments?
What? Okay. Joseph Arthur DeGonzo asked, "Would you 3 fight a prison fight?" So Sylvie, we'll start with you. Would you do a prison fight?
Like all 3 of us at once.
Well, that would be intense, gauntlet style. Royal Rumble.
I do not think I would personally do a prison fight. I actually am super into prison reform. It was something I was going to do in the U.S. before I became a fighter. So I've got lots of opinions that would get in the way of being able to do that, I think.
What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I would do it. That would be
Yeah, as
pretty
a
cool.
prisoner, though, no.
Not as a prisoner, no.
I would hope.
But I
not.
do want to see that movie coming out, the Prayer Before Dawn, even though I can't find anywhere it's going to be.
Oh yeah, I don't know
premiered.
either. Well, we'll definitely give a shout out.
So
when
that's
it
about a white guy. That's what I call. I don't say Westerners. I just say white guy.
does. Frang.
It's a white guy. He goes into the Thai prison system, and they actually let him fight his way out.
Interesting.
I feel like it's just a business. It's a way for them to make money, just like the corrupt police.
All right, so we got some good other questions. Pete is asking, if you were ever to coach, would it be in the U.S. or Thailand?
Ooh. I want to stay in Thailand. I actually would really love to open an all-female gym.
That would be sick.
But then I can't come train.
Are the Muay Thai guys allowed?
We'll put some pads on you and they can
They just go at it.
Self-defense.
We could make an adorable movie like Ladybugs, just put a wig on you and pretend to be.
What's that movie where they dress up like women and pretend to be the Wayne's brothers? We could be like
White
that.
chick.
Yeah. We could be white chicks of Sylvie's Muay Thai gym. All right, so we got Kevin Lee. What's the worst Muay Thai habit you fixed in Thailand that you don't think would have gotten noticed in the U.S.?
Clinch. Everything in the clinch.
Yeah, that's just not being taught, though. I think a bad habit would be balance. Like, I think that we just don't focus on balance in the West the way that it's focused on and emphasized here. And it is the biggest difference between fighters that make you, like, piss yourself and fighters who are like, oh, they're kind of good.
Fair enough. Carlos Chapa wants to know, what's the best lesson, the number one lesson you've had in your Muay Thai journey? Like the one takeaway, I guess.
So loaded.
I know that's a loaded question.
I don't think I could distill it down to one.
I wouldn't think so.
But maybe something like you're not done yet. Like, you can always do more.
That's fair enough. That's simple to the point. Austin Pierce got another question. How have you been in Thailand for 5.5 years? What was the visa process like that you went through? And he wants to move permanently to Thailand, and he's just curious about how you've been in Thailand without being sent back at all.
Way too long of a answer for this, and it constantly changes. Thai bureaucracy loves to change rules, but I've been on education visas mostly.
Fair enough. And do you study Thai there?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. And how's your Thai?
It's very good.
Nidnoi Mak.
You can't say Nidnoi Mak. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, very little. Come on.
No.
Much.
No.
Much little. Don't worry about it. I speak fluent Thai. We got a bunch of questions coming in. Boom. Jesse Stokes, is training and experimenting by yourself just as important as training at the gym with a group?
I know Jesse Stokes. Jesse Stokes has been a patron before.
I like experimenting by myself and with groups.
Yeah, I think this is gonna sound exactly the way it is. You have to experiment with yourself in order to know more about yourself. Yeah, I think it's really important to do both. You can't only train yourself because you need to have the pressure with which to test that knowledge or what you figured out. Like you can't be one of these guys who like just kicks the bag and thinks that you're amazing. You might be amazing at kicking the bag, but then someone punches you in the face and you're not that great anymore. So you need to work with other people in order to have that pressure, but it's super important to also just like get in your own groove and like work on your own stuff and experiment by yourself so that you can just feel the Muay Thai. I cannot tell you, on this 3-day meditation retreat that I took, the times that I would stand up and just do some Muay Thai to like shake around was the most like, good God, Muay Thai feels good it's ever felt in my life. It totally like reminded me how much I love physically doing it.
Beautiful. Well said. So we got a few more questions. You can answer them as short or as long as you like. Sadman Adomo wants to know, how did you get introduced to Muay Thai, and how did you realize that it was the life you wanted to pursue?
There are two versions of that story. The first one is that I saw it in a movie. I saw it in Ong Bak and had never seen anything like it and was like, holy shit, I want to do that. The second version is that having seen it and gone and trying to train it at this total bullshit gym in New Jersey from a fucking Taekwondo guy where I'm like, this isn't it. When I finally got to Master K, that was what really ignited in it, like what put the fire in me and made me really love Muay Thai, because I've never met anyone other than Diesel Noi who loves Muay Thai as much as Master K does. So there's two. There's one, seeing it in a movie, and the other is actually finding it and feeling it for the first time is what like really got me into Muay Thai, and that's basically how it gradually took over my life, is that excitement.
Paul, can you see the questions?
No, unless you put them up.
I'll just ask all the questions. Oh, I can put them up. I forgot about that. All right. Araceli. Love Araceli. She wants to know, lion fight. Would you fight, if this fight was available, would you fight Iman Barlow?
Iman's bigger than me.
That's what I thought.
I fight bigger than me. So, yeah, I think that given the right time for that fight, like if the time opportunity thing worked out, I would love to fight Iman.
What does she fight? Well, how big is she?
She fights at
12?
She cuts to like 52, 54. She's like Tiffany's size.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Kelly Martin Vague wants to know, can you talk about your tattoos?
What about them? They're Sakyan.
Well,
they're
talk
Sakyan,
about them
they're
like a bro at the bar. Talk about them.
Yo, you see
man,
this
where'd you get your work done?
Well, yeah, can you talk a little bit, I guess?
Bitches love this one.
Well said. Well said.
But why do you think we match?
Well, I guess talk about, I'll break it down for her. What the Sakyam means to you and your chest piece, because I know that was a significant piece.
Yeah, they're all super significant. A Sakyan is basically if you think about like an amulet being lucky and protective, and you put that shit on to bring you luck and protection, and you're like putting your amulet on for this purpose of empowerment. A Sakyan is a permanent version of that. So the tattoo is a symbol upon which you meditate for these kind of powers and purposes, but it also protects you and grants you different types of powers and luck and protections and that kind of thing. So my Sakyan are not the kind you see on women. I had to have a very particular development in relationship as a Nak Muay with my Ajarn in order for him to agree to do these tattoos. And now he's all about like, I want to give you Hanuman sleeves. And I'm like, hold on. I'm not quite ready, but I absolutely love them. I kind of forget that I haven't always had them. Like I'll look at pictures of myself from a couple of years ago where I don't have my back piece yet. And I'm like, what the fuck? That doesn't look right. But when I first got my chest piece, Ajarn had warned me that it was going to like really shock people, that like when I went into the ring, people were going to kind of freak out. And I was walking through a crowd to the ring where you have to like, excuse me, like pushing past these guys to get to it. And the collective look of the individual men who would turn and look at me as I was going to the ring was like I was climbing in there with an axe. It was amazing. So yeah, it has a lot of significance and power.
Beautiful. All right, we got time for one more question. This is a good one. Bunny Patel wants to know, as a beginner, let me put this question up. As a beginner, what would you suggest I should focus on to start with?
I haven't been a beginner for a long time, so this advice is coming from someone who's like been married for 60 years, and you're like, what would you tell a newlywed? It's been a long time.
I guess if you were, with all the knowledge that you have right now, and you were to start all over, what would you want to focus on the most, if that makes sense?
This might actually be a disappointing answer. It's like people want diet advice, and you're like, eat less. I would advise you to focus on everything you like. Like, you don't have to work on your weaknesses when you first start. Just work on the stuff you like because it feels good. And then as you start to find weaknesses where you can like have better balance or like make your kick higher or whatever, you do that incrementally, but do the things that feel good, because that's what gets you to the gym.
Beautiful. Well, that's all we have time for the questions. There are a few that we're not going to be able to get to, but yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, for watching, for engaging, asking questions, all that stuff. And yeah, make sure you follow Sylvie. She just had her 201st fight. Do you have a set? Do you have a new goal, like 250, I guess?
Let's do 4. I'll confirm in a couple of months, but let's go with 4.
400?
400. Fuck it. Let's go.
Fuck. Yo, that is badass. That's what I'm fucking talking about. Setting your dreams big. Hell yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for being an inspiration. I draw a lot of inspiration from what you're doing as well, and I can't wait to be in Thailand and try to follow in your footprints in my own way. And so, yeah, thanks for sharing all your knowledge and for documenting it all, doing the legend library, just doing everything you do for the sport is much appreciated.
Well, thank you for helping me do it, Sean. You are definitely one of my supporters and patrons, so you make it possible, man.
Absolutely. Paul, any last words?
No, just thank you. It was great speaking with you, watching you fight in person, and always hopping on the podcast. You have a wealth of knowledge, so our people always appreciate it. I'm always super interested myself. I'm like one of the people in the comments. I get to ask more questions, so I'm happy to do it. I'm happy about it, and I'll be back in Chiang Mai in April. So then hopefully we can link up between that time. Maybe I'll stop by Pattaya. I don't know why, but it just hasn't been one region that I've been attracted to for some reason. But I got to make it to all the regions, so maybe I'll stop through. We'll get some training in together.
That's very polite, the way you're like, I don't know why I'm not attracted to it. I know why.
I think people who know who are in the scene probably know why, but yeah, I haven't been there either. But hopefully, I'll be in Thailand next year, so hopefully we cross paths too. So yeah.
Well, okay, wait. Well, because we're trash talking Pattaya, which is totally fair. Let me just say this: it's like that Simpsons where they go into the burlesque house and Principal Skinner's there, and he's like, "I only came in to get directions of how to get away from here." It's actually really easy to stay away from the skeezy parts. Like I've lived here for 3 years now.
I don't mind the skeezy parts. It just seemed like there's other places that are like have the skeezy parts, but they're nicer around the skeezy parts. So it's like one of those things. It's like I could go here, but then I can go here and have all the same but better.
I'm not saying I'm grossed out by $2 hookers. It's just there are $4 hookers. Nice, Paul.
She's on top of shit, man. Can't sneak anything about her. All right. Well, yeah, we'll wrap up. And thanks again, Sylvie, for staying up late after your fight and
no problem.
Doing your thing. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, and we'll let you know when this podcast comes out on iTunes and all that good stuff.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.